if it takes about 6 to 8 weeks on average to form a new habit, it means you have to do it repeatedly. We think it's about willpower, but it's not really about willpower. That's why the whole personal development industry is such a big industry, because it's not solving the problem either. We are the co-authors of the Biohacker's Handbook. Over a decade ago, we started working together. And one of the biggest questions that people ask us always is like, what should I do? What should I do? What should I measure? What should I buy as a supplement or a wearable or any kind of technology? And, there's just that much limited time. And like Olli, as a doctor treating patients, like he doesn't scale. Like how many patients did you see like in a year?
In a year, I would say in a day, my record is 94, which is ridiculous. You have like 5 minutes per patient. So if you think how much you can do in that short time, it's literally nothing. And today we're going to be talking about how to change habits. And we're going to be launching something really cool. So stay tuned.
So one question to you as a doctor, how often when those 94 come to you, how many percentage of them it's about them changing their habits?
I would say maybe 4. It's just give me the pill, give me the solution, and I might take it. That's also the thing that people don't necessarily take those medications. They need some kind of confirmation, maybe a sort of relief, just to talk to somebody. But that's not the issue today. Today is something new, something how to create sustainable change.
That's right. So how do you change yourself one habit at a time? Health is to be in balance. Imbalance leads to disease. If you look at your laboratory work, something that is outside of reference range, you want to bring it back into the reference range in a sense. So that's kind of linked to the homeostasis, the way how the body is synchronizing and connecting, trying to restore the balance of the body. And health is often all about that. It's about the circadian rhythms. It's about, that you sleep enough, day-night cycle, but also in terms of nervous system that sometimes you're like in the sympathetic state and then you need to be in the parasympathetic state. So it's the balance between these two that is really all about longevity. And in biohacking, there's this idea kind of like, how do you, perform better, faster, stronger, and all of that. But in the end, it's really, biohacking is about restoring and maintaining that balance and building that resilience in you. And unfortunately, when we look at it, how people are doing, 27% of world population has one or more chronic condition. Chronic degenerative diseases that break the body down. If you live more than 65 years old, which is kind of expected for most of us, 64% will have one or more degenerative diseases that is going to potentially shorten their lifespan, and also extremely importantly, health span. So on average, people spend, 12 to 13% of their life in an unoptimal condition, not healthy. And the main killers or the main chronic diseases we have is heart disease, respiratory diseases, different metabolic issues like diabetes, as well as nervous system issues like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And at job, people just like have broken spines because they sit too much. Now, behind all of these, you always see low-level inflammation, you have oxidative stress, and you have chronic insulin resistance and energy crisis in the body.
Exactly. And if we take a look at the next slide and think about how much money goes into healthcare, or rather you could call it sick care. So the outlier is obviously USA. We are in a little bit more better place in the Europe, but still the cost, it rises when you get older. And this is something that's not sustainable. We need solutions to prevent all this. And what's the lifespan expectancy? How to increase that?
So during the industrial times, we've been able to double life expectancy from like 45 to 85 and beyond. But in some countries like US, it's actually going down. And what you see is the increase in obesity and being overweight is linked to all of these like chronic conditions. So you have low-level inflammation, oxidative stress, and you have often chronic insulin resistance. And there's also this idea of Alzheimer's and dementia in general that is kind of like a type 3 diabetes. It's an energy crisis in the brain in its energy production. So that's one of the theories as well. But one of the kind of leading ways, most studied thing, obviously, that is recommended in healthcare is to lose weight or stop smoking or stop drinking. And how are people like performing actually? Like if you look at the adherence problem, so the doctor and patient relationship relies on the fact that when the doctor does the diagnosis, prescribes you something, it could be a pill or it could be a dietary intervention or supplements or behavioral change, that the patient is actually taking the prescription and doing it. But 50 to 85% of people will not do it. The failure rate is incredible. And if you think of healthcare, that's kind of its biggest failure. Their inability to help people to lose weight, to get on proper diets and nutrition and all of that. And the one key about adherence problem in general with medication is what happens. So when you give a pill to a customer or a patient and they come back and you ask, have you taken it? They will say, yes. Usually they have taken more, they haven't taken it, or they're lying. So you can't trust the data that is coming out from that interaction either. So how do you heal someone or help someone who is not ready to do what you want them to do?
I would call that like a Pinocchio kind of like a failure. So the percentage, it sounds very crazy. What do you think the 85% is? Is it taking the pill? Is it, let's say, type 2 diabetes diet plan or quitting smoking? It might be surprising that's actually the type 2 diabetes diet plan. 85% fail or never engage that. 50% do not take medication. But surprisingly, it's easier to quit smoking. Possibly the reason could be that it leads to, death pretty easily, cancer, like the endpoints or the mortality rate, it's higher. So is it about fear that drives people to change habits? Or could there be like a non-fear response or solution to that?
That's a really good point, because when you have a terminally ill person that they need to change their behavior, like let's say we tell him that you have 2 years to live, or you have 1 year, or you have 5 or 6 months, still the adherence problem is there, even when they know. So something else is needed. So let's go into the, why the medical system has failed in helping people to actually implement healthy habits and change their behavior so they don't need to come back for, quick fixes. How do we help them to, conduct these, deeper changes that needs to happen in them? Why is behavior change so hard? We are kind of like robots. We repeat the same patterns over and over again. Think of your morning routine. Like, what did you do in the morning? Think of your afternoon routine. What do you usually eat? Like, it's easier to kind of like slump back in to the learned behaviors, what is kind of familiar to you and what is kind of triggering the release of all those neurochemicals that, wire you. So neurons that fire together, they wire together. So it becomes harder and harder the stronger the network is in place. So what biohackers do is behavior change. You're all experts in behavior change. It's super difficult, I know, thinking of addictions or coping mechanisms and all of that. Food can be one of those. But what can we do to intelligently really help people to change behavior so that the adherence problem becomes less of an issue and we can actually get the results that we seek?
How many of you find it easy to create a new habit or change a behavior? I would say maybe 17% roughly. So it's not easy. And it's because of the habit loop. You have the trigger. Oh, I need coffee. Or, I need water. Well, this is actually a good habit. Drink some water. You have created yourself the routine. You have the trigger. Then you get the reward. Could be a dopamine boost. Could be something that you feel great. But we are diverse as human beings. For some, it could take 18 days. The other person, it could take 254 days. Think about the difference. On average, it's though like 6 to 8 weeks to create a new sustainable habit. But you have to find your ways to do it and how you're like genetically unique. Even genetic tests, they can show you that, hey, for example, for me, I'm high dopamine, high noradrenaline genetic-wise, but low serotonin. So for me, the changing the habit is easier because the high dopamine, high noradrenaline. But for some, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, for some, it's just easier to kind of go into the safety of oxytocin and serotonin and not go through and some difficulties of changing their behavior. Now, if it takes about 6 to 8 weeks on average to form a new habit, it means you have to do it repeatedly. And it kind of needs to be kind of linked to kind of a flow state where it's not too difficult that becomes frustrating and not too easy that you become bored. So it needs to be engaging and providing those reward mechanisms. And it's often easier to inject some new behavior in a sequence of an existing habit. Think of your morning routine, for example. So for example, let's say you do the coffee and you don't exercise ever. So maybe you do like just some static squats while you wait for the coffee to drip. And that might be, what gets you into the habit of exercising every day. So there is a lot of psychological factors at play here, obviously, when it comes to changing your behavior. And we think it's about willpower, but it's not really about willpower. There is something deeper that is going on. There's so many self-help books and all this personal development stuff that focuses on willpower and focusing on the right thing and just like grinding it through, but that very often fails. And maybe that's why the whole personal development industry is such a big industry, because it's not solving the problem either.
And yeah, if motivation did work, you see these videos on YouTube, like high motivation or like motivational speak, this, that, the other. For me, it does nothing. Maybe irritates a little bit. So motivation, it could be lack of that, but that's not really the issue. You are familiar with the stuff you do that you've been repeating from year to year. Fear of failure. What if I don't succeed? If you're an overachiever, you try to do everything perfectly. It's too complicated. I don't even want to try. Or you have, that's the mental resistance part. So there are psychological factors, but this is not all. Psychology is one thing. You have your own unique biology. I described my genome, what it showed me. For example, neuropeptide I, if I'm high oxytocin, low serotonin, and so on and so on. Finding these factors. If you have high chemical reward, let's say you're high in dopamine, you could also develop bad habits, addictions. Take nicotine, for example, or any other drug.
Yeah, with nicotine, for example, it's really about what you associate with. So if you do some work and then you take nicotine and it gives you the dopamine release and increased connection to prefrontal cortex, you associate basically taking nicotine to getting work done. So suddenly you can't get work done without taking nicotine. See? So you can actually really start strategically thinking, what am I doing preceding to the release of dopamine? And you can do the same, not just with nicotine, you can do it with an ice bath or sauna or anything. What are you associating, the kind of behaviors you want to kind of amplify? You do something that is a bit struggling, you kind of want to do it. And then the question is how do you trigger that? Now, many people who do psychedelics, they focus a lot on the ceremony. What's happening in the ceremony? But actually, it opens up a neuroplastic window that lasts several weeks after. So after the window, if you keep on doing the behaviors that are easy for you, maybe bad eating habits or behaviors or being late, staying up late, browsing social media, it's not very good idea in this neuroplastic window to keep on repeating the things that are bad for you. But actually, to dedicate the time after that experience, at least few weeks, to doing something extremely difficult that is almost painful to do. But I guarantee, because of the neuroplastic window, it's more likely you wire things. And that's the integration. But very few people actually understand what the integration here means. Integration is really that you change something that you really want to induce as a permanent change in a sense. And of course, there is environmental aspects to this as well. You know, we have different coping mechanisms, different like upbringing, influences, environment. And if you are an overweight person and all your friends are eating, you know, fast food, and they just laugh at your funny protein smoothies or whatever medicinal mushrooms you're going to take, like it's more likely you're going to relapse, because we kind of like, we imitate each other. We have these mirror cells and all of that. So it's super important that you surround yourself with the right kind of social influence that is actually amplifying and rewarding you for doing it and not kind of punishing you for trying to change your behaviors.
Indeed, and to add on that, like this is the perfect social environment to create new habits, but this could also be a very high stress environment. So what you learn here today, the goal and the challenge is to implement these to your everyday life. This is like a microcosmos. Everything seems like doable. It's very possible. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. But create yourself a good environment with good people, nature, like low stress environment. Then it's very easy to begin changing the habits. And also, the implementation is very critical. You have to have clear goals. What do I want to do? If it's just, okay, let's do this, that, the other. What do I want to do? You know, a simple plan. This day, I would like to do that, and then implement that the next 3 weeks. If you take, let's say, like too many challenges, you could be lost. Pick one or two, and be consistent.
With the consistency, I learned that with meditation the hard way during the pandemic, that I've been kind of like meditating and doing breath work on and off like a long time. But during the pandemic, I went through something difficult. A loss of a close friend of ours who we wrote the book together. And so I had like 4 months of kind of feeling like not everything is meaningless. And the only thing that helped me to really kind of keep on going was that every morning I dedicated 3 hours to meditation and breath work and really getting embodied. And by doing it every single day for 3 hours, every single morning, I started seeing after 4 months incredible changes happening. And I had no idea what it could do if the practice is consistent instead of like just occasionally doing a little bit of breath work. You get a release, oh, this feels good. But if you do it consistently, that's when you start to create these changes. So that's kind of like really about the understanding of the habit loop there. And since then, it's been very easy for me to, I meditate pretty much like, I would say eyes open when I'm in a public transport or in a conference like this. So it's no longer just like sitting, but I'm able to kind of be in that state also eyes open. So the question then is like, how do we form new habits successfully? And so there's many different like key psychological and behavioral, neuropsychological things that need to happen. Now, biohackers use quantified self tools and measuring as a mirror to themselves. So they kind of start to see themselves, and it's when you start to track your sleep, it's actually moves your attention to the sleep. It doesn't really matter what the number says. It's already changing the system. Just like in science, there's the observer effect, that when you observe a wave, or if you are observing a particle, that's what you see. So in a sense, once you start to observe physical movement, diet, sleep, exercise, it becomes a mirror. And I have this idea that the faster the feedback loops, the faster the learning, faster the change as well.
What if you don't have 3 hours? You change completely. You had a mission. But what if you don't have 3 hours? Could it be like 10 minutes? That's even enough. Take small steps.
Yes.
Be consistent, like every day.
Alcohol use.
Eat it.
Alcohol use is really good example. Like, it's not about the quantity. It's not like you get super wasted every weekend. But if you drink repeatedly, it's kind of a habit, a practice. You have a little bit of a wine here and there, like almost every day. Suddenly you drink a bottle a day. So and if you drink a lot, like you just like you're releasing the dopamine. Dopamine is interesting. It's kind of like a signaling molecule. it's when you do it, it's kind of like guiding you towards it, but it requires more effort to get the same release. So you have to take a break from it. So the pacing of the breaks is super important. But one thing that really arises from science is kind of the biggest realization for all of us. It's not the numbers. It's not the freaking science. It's not what's in the papers, what you need to eat and all of that. It's that you surround yourself with people who have the same goals and lifestyle. And this is what the biking community is. It's much easier to change your behaviors when you're surrounded by a community that is implementing that practice. It's going through the same struggles. It's going through the same learnings, all of that, all that sharing, all that mirror selves that reflect back to you. Someone else is on that same path, wants to change themselves. So with social media, the problem in biohacking has been, it's been very one way. You listen to podcasts, you follow influencers online, it's all one way. You're not really having a conversation with Huberman or Tim Ferriss or Dave Asprey or anyone. It's all one way. It's broadcast. So how do you find the others? If you really want to do an ice bath, okay, you're doing, the Wim Hof method, but you're not really interacting with Wim Hof.
Fun alone.
It's absolutely boring also to sink in, and the highest points in your life, the most important experiences, those are shared.
Yeah.
Imagine looking at the beautiful mountain view and you wish there is someone else there with you, and then you pick up your phone and take a photograph of it. So actually what really provides the reward is that there's actually someone else there next to you.
Why did God create humans?
I don't know. Let's go.
It's not fun dining out alone.
Although we do.
It's always like you need the reflection. You need other people. Of course, if you're like, let's say you're high dopamine, you can do, like I do colds, I can do it like alone. But it's 10x the effects when you have good people around you. You share the experience.
And doing 10 years this next year, we have the 10-year anniversary of Biker Summit in Helsinki, Finland, where this all started from in 2014. And, that's kind of like this community, this last decade, I realized that this is why I changed. So what is lacking is how do we connect this community? And our gift to you, what we have built, is called HoloHabits. It's building these holistic habits that integrate all different aspects of you from different dimensions with content and information. So people ask us all the time, what should I do? What should I eat? What should I do? This and that. It all starts from data. Understanding the data of your biology. And then based on that, you understand what are your Healthspan bottlenecks that help you to optimize your longevity, what you should focus on, what is the 20% that will result in 80% of improvement. So all the work that we have done in terms of our books, in terms of our courses, everything is being integrated into this application that takes your blood work, your genetic information, in the future also your stool tests and your urine tests, and integrates all that information to identify your unique Healthspan bottlenecks and connects that to the content that we have created, and not just us. We are opening up that platform for the best minds in this industry to contribute that are linked to your biomarkers, that because you have this biomarker, these are the things you should focus on. But then comes the hardest part, which is changing the habits.
Yeah. This is not like, okay, we came up with this, let's say, half a year ago. This has been in the making since, I think, 2015.
Yeah, basically 10 years.
To develop something called Hero app, but then that didn't happen. Then we had the HealthDX platform with the lab thing, and now we have been putting up all these together into this HoloHabits.
Yeah, the Hero app was based on hero's journey, kind of like how do you guide someone through the hero's journey. So this is what this application is doing as well. Let me explain what's happening here in this application. So you can buy your blood work, your genetic tests directly from the app. You get the content that is linked to your biology. We explain you what all these different biomarkers mean, what they are connected to, what kind of healthy habits you can form by understanding, your biology, and what you should actually then do. How do you optimize your lab results? How do you bring things that are out of balance back into the balance? So let's say you have problems with vitamin D. What are the key sources for that, and we explain you specifically based on genetics and blood work why these things are relevant for you. And then we give you very practical information as well in your daily routines, like what should you do. And you can learn all of this. So if you read any of our books, thousands of pages, that's cool. But what we have done now, we have brought in the community of biohackers, many of them speakers here, to provide their best top routines, what they are doing, very concretely, videos where they explain, this is what I do every day, this is how I do it, and then you can join the challenge. Let's say you want to join a challenge of morning hydration with Olli. Every day, you take a photograph of yourself enjoying your morning hydration, and you share that with a community of people. Studies show that people who, want to change their diet, what really is relevant is that you share that with the community of people. You can have conversation with other people, you can join these challenges, and if you do this diligently, you actually earn a cheat day, and you can skip, be a bad boy once a week if you want to. So that's HoloHabits. You can download it. The included biomarkers that are in the test that you can buy from the Biohacker Center store. It used to cost thousands of euros just a few years ago to get.
I would say about 2,000 euros with all these things. Now it's what was the price?
Yeah, it's a bit over 300 euros. Like, come on, this is not accessible. So the first step is to make this accessible and available to the wider public. So you need the data first. And this is not like traditional lab stuff. This is nutritional data, which is actually more important from a Healthspan perspective, that you have the right building blocks. Because if you're lacking a certain vitamin or certain mineral, like it's almost like you're building an apartment and you lack, clay, or you lack stone or whatever, and the workers need to wait for something to arrive.
You need building blocks. Why measure amino acids? They are the building blocks of life. Hormones, minerals, also structural building blocks. Mitochondria, NAD, hot topic at the moment. This is the most precise measurement of intercellular NAD. So we have partnered up with BioStark's laboratory and created this kit. You have vitamins and like most important fatty acids. And this, you will get all the information also in the app. It's in the biomarkers course section. And next, when you have done this, you should be doing...
Maybe a few more words about BioStarks here. So this is developed by people who measure athletes. So the World Anti-Doping Association and different protocols that they use to figure out if someone has taken a drug, but also to assess their health status. Now this technology is available for the general public, and you can do this at home. You provide a blood sample. It's not a dry blood sample, by the way. It is correlated with gold laboratory standard measurement on these markers. On top of that, we recommend you to do certain things like liver and kidney and cholesterol values at an actual laboratory where you go in and give full blood. But these things you can now measure at home. How many of you take NAD supplements or any kind of like NAD activators or anything like that? How many of you have measured your NAD levels? One. Do you know what you're doing? So you need a methyl donor, for example, for NAD to operate. You need to be able to recycle NAD. It's not just a supplement. Once you take it, like how do you recycle the NAD? Siim is going to be talking about that tomorrow. But really, once you have this blood work, you want to go deeper. You want to understand, why is my iron levels low or high? And that's where the genetic information comes into play. And we have partnered with Self-Decode, and Joe Cohen, is one of the top biohackers in the industry. He has tested everything on himself. He does mega doses of stuff. He measures things. Like, I don't know anyone who has quantified so many or taken so many supplements at once like him. But in the end, like the science and the team that he's working with is solid in terms of genetic information, much wider amount of SNPs available. And there's a whole database of 7,000 different recommendations that are truly targeted health things, not for disease management, but for health span related habits. So together with BioStarks, together with Self-Decode, I think we are creating something absolutely unique. And the app is free, so you can download it. You probably have to, pay a little bit of money to get the test done. Rest of the year, you can use it for free. It will forever be free. There will be some premium content on top of that. And I recommend you guys to, take the app tonight, browse through, think about what do I want to start doing? Is it breath work? Is it ice bath? Is it cold showers? What do you want to do? And get on that challenge. Pick your, coach or leader in a sense and start sharing and see what happens. It might be quite interesting if you are ready to do that for 6 to 8 weeks. But 2 weeks already is something that will help you to move forward. And once you have the data, that helps you to move from reactive sick care, suddenly something breaks, to actually predictive healthcare, where you use data and mass personalization of these things, and you identify specifically the things that help you to move from sick care and disease care to true healthcare, which is longevity and Healthspan optimization.
Yeah, so this has been a dream for me as a medical doctor, going through the system. I know many of you have gone through the system, right? How many of you have gone through the medical system seeking help, not getting any? At least I did. It is diagnostic. It's already what has happened. Maybe a little bit of prediction, okay, maybe yearly labs or something, but we can do better. We can prevent it, we can increase our health span, we can live better, we can feel better. And this is a help for you.
Exactly.
And like biohacking, it has been a term that sounds a bit mystic. Well, not for you guys, of course, but it's about health optimization and health span optimization and prevention.
Yeah.
But that's too long. That's why we call it biohacking.
Yeah, and we call these HoloHabits. These are the holistic habits for longevity. I think it's time to move beyond biohacking. We are going to kind of drop that word a little bit on the backside, because it's kind of violent. It's a bit kind of technical, very easily misunderstood. It's also very freaking self-centered. I'm hacking myself. Cool. For what purpose, right? So holistic means, it's expanded, that you're also connected to the environment, the people you interact with, the nature. All of that is part of that change you are part of. But in the end, biohacking is in the core of it, measuring, optimizing things, guided by leading science and technologies and experts and all of that. But I encourage you to download this app. 10 Taka is coming there, the samurai. Yogetsu Akasaka, the 10 Buddhist monk. If you want to learn, 10 meditation, we are bringing some of the top experts. Siim Land, it will teach you about intermittent fasting, 1 meal a day, all of that. If you want to do these things with us, now is the time. And if you want our advice, this is the app for it. It has all the advice. You don't need to ask me. Just download the app. I will be your AI assistant.